Welcome back, guys. Seeing that red valve cover sticking out of the back of the car is a huge milestone for me. I mean, I know it's not ultimately too different from having the mock-up motor in the back of the car, which you've had for months on end, but knowing that the engine we're going to be using and the transmission we are going to be using are bolted together and mounted in their final resting place is just massively exciting to me. And I'm excited to share this moment with you guys, so thank you to everyone that's been here since day one. Thank you to all the new subscribers, and a preemptive thanks to anybody that's about to subscribe, because it helps me out a bunch. And you don't want to miss this because it's about to come together crazy quick. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of work left to do, but it's going to be pedal down from here on out because I am fired up and there's only so much left before we get to drive this thing. So let me show you guys how the engine went into the car because it was a tight fit, and then I'm going to show you guys how I lucked out because I gambled on a handful of things, but it definitely paid off. This thing fits perfect. Check it out. Because the engine's not going to be bagged up anymore, the first thing that we're going to do is tape off all of the ports and any access points to the inside of the engine so that nothing can fall inside. We don't want shavings or dust, or worse yet, any nuts or bolts to fall down in there. With everything closed up, it was time to pull the original engine mount and lift point off the front of it and put on our mount from the previous K24. After rigging up a chain along with some microfibers to protect the nice valve cover and cylinder head from any damage, we got this thing lifted up and disconnected from the engine stand itself. And for safekeeping, we lowered it down onto a wooden pallet. This way we were able to attach the transmission without too much effort. In the last episode, we got our Quaife 5-speed sequential transmission, and because it's meant for a K-series engine, it's a direct bolt-on application, so installation was quite simple. It was admittedly rewarding to see the engine and transmission finally joined together, as it's been a long time coming for both these things to arrive, and seeing them mated up is definitely a motivating point in this build. Obviously, our transmission mount still mates right up to the trans, and overall this thing should be pretty much drop-in, 100%. We don't have to change anything. The only thing that might give us some trouble is the oil pump hanging off the side of the engine, but we'll have to see. With everything joined together, it's finally time to put this thing in, so we got the engine cover pulled off the car and dragged it over into place underneath our engine hoist. We've had the other K24 in and out of the car at least a half dozen times, if not 10. But nonetheless, we took our time dropping this engine in to make sure we didn't cause any damage. It did go in pretty smoothly, although that oil pump hanging off the side did create a few clearance issues getting it into place. There were only a few millimeters to spare on each side of the engine in order for it to clear the chassis tubes that we've added in. But with a little finagling, it did drop in. There was a little bit of work required to line up the engine mounts, having had to straighten them out after we had the engine fall in one of the previous episodes, but everything did line up within a few short minutes, and we were able to let all of the weight off of the hoist. Hell yeah! After getting the chains disconnected from the engine, I stepped back and took it all in. Oh man, does it look good in there. I am so pumped. It is speechless. All right, I guess you guys actually want to see this thing. Let me show you what's up. It might be far from running, but it feels like we've been working towards this moment right here for the better part of 8 months. I guess it's no surprise, but the engine looks absolutely amazing in the car, as does the transmission, surprisingly. I didn't think I'd be excited about it, but here I am. Although this does point out the need to find some new, clean accessories like a starter and an alternator, because there's no way I'm going to bolt on the dirty old units from the old motor. But let me show you guys some of the details. We do have a couple of small issues to contend with, the biggest one being the shifter cable length. You can see the shifter cable hanging out down here, but the problem is it's about a foot short of meeting its linkage over here. So until we get a custom cable ordered, there's not much a point in mounting the shifter in the cabin. I mentioned that I gambled on some things and then it paid off, and what I want to show you guys is that when we designed the fuel cell, I gave up about 2 gallons of capacity in hopes that the oil pump would clear and that I wouldn't have any problems with these fittings that point right at it clearing. I wanted to make sure we had plenty of room to put fittings on the end of these guys. And I'm happy to say we've got more than enough room of clearance and everything worked out really well. And we've still got 10 gallons of capacity in the fuel cell, which should be more than enough. I'm really happy with how much space there is around this engine, and serviceability should be really good. I'm also happy to say that our space for the oil pan cleared without an issue. We've got a nice gap there and I have no worries about it hitting at any point. So really all of the stuff that we kind of winged it on and gambled with really worked out well. Ignoring the rust, one other issue that I was worried about is this oil filter outlet right here. We've gotten rid of the oil filter housing because we've gone dry sump, and in its place we've got an AN fitting that we'll need to route. And I was really worried about this fitting here clearing our chassis in this area, but I'm happy to say that there is more than enough room for us to fit a 45 or a 90 degree off of the end of this and route our hosing elsewhere. Honestly, everything looks just fantastic. I could go on and on about it, but you get the gist. So I feel like at this point, you guys wouldn't forgive me if I didn't put the turbo and the manifold back on this thing. So let's throw those on real quick. We're just gonna bolt this stuff up for a mock-up. There's no reason to go full tilt in mounting everything right now, but I am gonna go on and transfer over the support rods for the manifold so that we can put the weight of the turbo on it. With everything assembled and taking a step back, I guess it's no surprise once again, but the look of this whole setup is really becoming a dream come true. I mean, this thing looks insane with the carbon fiber manifold, the big Garrett turbo. Everything just looks right at home, and I like to think that if you didn't know what engine originally came in this car, you might not know that this one was a Honda outright. The red valve cover looks a lot better in the car than I originally thought that it might, and it really pays tribute to the original Ferrari intake manifolds and valve covers, and I think it looks right at home. Alright guys, a short but sweet episode. I'm wrapping this one here. The engine's in. This was a fun one, but I've got my work cut out for me. I've got some big plans for the weekend. It might be a little bit ambitious, but I'm gonna see if I can't get the control arms for the other side of the car finished now that we've got them all drawn up, and I just gotta make them. And then maybe make some linkages and see if we can't put this car back on the ground and roll it around. If I can come up with a rolling wheel and tire solution for the time being, I have no idea yet. But either way, that seems like a pretty good goal. Got some stuff to put on the motor, got some plumbing things to start figuring out, got to order some parts. Overall, lots of work, but I'm trying to make some crazy progress now. I want to get this thing done. With that said, I got to get to work, so thank you as always for the support. I'll catch you guys on Tuesday. All right, so the engine's in, we've looked at the details, and we got a good plan ahead of us. So now I'm gonna take a minute to talk about some thoughts and answer a handful of questions that you guys had, because after Tuesday's episode, one of two things happened. Either I did a poor job explaining why I shortened those control arms, why I need a 1-inch spacer, and how I want the wheels to fit, or this is a complicated thing and it went over some folks' heads. Now, egotistically, I want to assume that it's the latter, but this might just fall on me, so we're gonna take a minute to talk about it. Lots of you guys ask some variation of the same question. Why would you go through all of this effort just to run those wheels? Why would you go through this for wheels that don't fit? Why would you go through this instead of having custom machined wheels that solve this problem? Or why wouldn't you have wheels custom machined that don't need a spacer or that fit properly? That's a fair question, but it completely misses the point of the actual problem at hand. So let's step back real quick and try to figure out what that problem actually is. The problem is that the brakes are really big. Now, to run these old JDM wheels that I've got, we need to put a spacer behind them because there's pretty much no back pad on the wheel. We have to clear the caliper because otherwise that caliper is just gonna hit the back of the wheel. Wouldn't fit. Now, if I threw these wheels in the garbage and I called up my buddies at Rotiform and said, hey, I want to custom machine something here, the wheel would still have to have a big back pad or be creatively shaped in order to clear that caliper. Now, those are both valid options, but they don't solve the issue that I tried to discuss, which is by the time we clear that caliper, the wheel's gonna have no lip on it. And I don't want a wide body Ferrari with 1-inch lips on the wheels. I think that would look silly. It's not what I'm after. Now, fortunately, we have the opportunity to bring the wheel hubs in, redesign the suspension, and give ourselves lip without sacrificing anything. Plenty of you guys have said you're sacrificing stuff in order to run these wheels. No, I'm not. That was the whole point of the episode. We redefined our suspension geometry so we didn't give up literally anything. And now, whether I run these old JDM wheels or if I have something custom machined, either way, the wheels will now look good when they go on the car. Now, I'm hopeful that that makes some sense. Some of you guys are probably still going to ask some question about why wouldn't you do X, Y, or Z, but I promise you I've thought it through and I made the right decision. I covered all the bases. Some of you guys even said, why don't you just make the control arms longer so that you don't have to run the spacer? Well, that doesn't fix the problem. That just makes it even worse. Some of you guys ask, why not relocate the brake brackets and move the whole brake inwards on the hub so that you don't need the spacer? Well, the brake can't move back. It would hit the spindle. So I've gone through a lot of options. I thought about it, and ultimately to get this car to do what I want it to do and look the way that I want without sacrifice, it required making some control arms again. So we did it, and I'm happy with my decision. But that does bring us to the second part of this rant, which is some of you guys getting very up in arms about using spacers. Some of you guys think that spacers aren't safe. Some of you guys think that it's somehow like a Band-Aid fix for this problem. It's not. Spacers are a tool, and it's a tool employed by people all over the world to solve all sorts of problems, including race teams. And I hate to break this to some of you, but if you think spacers are dangerous, you are completely and utterly wrong. Porsche Motorsport uses spacers on all sorts of cars. 911s come with spacers from the factory. BMW's new M4 GT4 comes with an 1.5 inch spacer on the front of it, ready to race. That's how it goes around the track, whether it's at Spa, the Nürburgring, Laguna Seca, you name it. Spacers are employed by race teams across the world, so if you're worried about spacers on this car, don't be. It's gonna be just fine. And if you're worried about spacers being some sort of half measure instead of wheels that fit, it's not. Really, the only difference is some wheels have the spacer built into the back pad by virtue of having a taller machined pad on the back of the hub. We're just making it work for our application by using some spacers. It's easy. All right, let's hit that outro.